Fantastic. Well, thanks everybody. I'm glad you're still here. I know most of the people are probably out eating lunch, but I think this is such a hot topic that people want to stay and hear about the fascinating and complex, I guess, ethical question of how we talk about sustainability in defence. And you know, we had the most incredible opening this morning. We had the amazing Maya Gurpal talking about how we cannot create an economic system that destroys trust, that brings down the life systems that we need to have prosperity and wellness and well-being in our societies. Followed by that incredible panel, which was, of course, moderated by the incredible Stephen Erlanger from the New York Times, talking about what's happening right now in America. And the fact, really, across that panel, we were talking about the destruction of what back in the 1940s and 50s was called the New World Order. It's now the old world order. It's under attack. It's the trust-based system that around the world, liberal democracies will support each other. That we will honour and protect systems which can support society and create wealth for all of us. And really, you know, we're living in a dark time. I think we can say that Europe has never looked darker since the 1950s. It's 1940s, that's my opinion. We've got the remilitarization of Europe, you know, and this is something, I have 2 children, it's a dark time to be going to bed at night thinking about that. For humans on this planet, as NATO is falling apart. And of course, this is leading to a real growth in the industrial military complex, spending on defense. I'm sure that the defense industry is happy about some aspects of that. So to dive into it, I guess to unpack this complicated topic, I'd like to start with a difficult question, and that is, the tools of defense are really death and destruction. So isn't it kind of ironic to be talking about sustainability when that's the tool that you use?
So thank you very much, Dale, for having me represent Airbus here, and I'm super happy to be with you and have this discussion. I hope we continue it later on. So I maybe want to quickly jump on, is the industry currently happy about what's happening? I think in our industry we have people that oftentimes have a military background, and that are, at least I can say for our companies, the ones of our partners, I guess the European industry, that see themselves as partner of the governments that protect the values that you just mentioned. So really the democratic values that we have in Europe, freedom, prosperity. So therefore I oversaw over the last years and months how there was rather a deep worrying, like you have described it from you personally, about the developments in the world. It's the concrete military situations and conflicts that we are seeing that are bringing just death and unhappiness in parts of the world. But then really this global shift in geopolitics that you talked about, this world order in so many aspects that is kind of falling apart. So maybe this, just up front, that's the main discussions we are having. And then we are coming to what is our purpose in the defense industry, and that's this ethical topic that you are opening up our panel with, where the question is defense, is the industry, and can an industry with the products we are having be sustainable? And I would say I cannot answer that question for you. I can offer you my personal perspective and the perspective of me representing Airbus. That, as you just rightly mentioned, stability over such decades we have seen enabled us to have discussions like we are having them today at the GREENTECH Festival about progression topics like sustainability, diversity, biodiversity. It's UN Biodiversity Day today. And I think it's those values that are at stake. So we are a strong believer that deterrence at the end will secure stability and therefore enable those values. I think that is my personal view in this very broad term of sustainability. In a more narrow aspect of sustainability, we of course have to be challenged like any other industry, that we are making sure that we are decreasing our CO2 footprint. And this is really just me offering that perspective. We had the debate for example, on the EU level in the last years. Can an industry per se with those products be sustainable or not? You all know the taxonomy debate. I would personally answer it as yes, and I feel that since the war on Ukraine started, I think that picture has overcome altogether and has been a broader picture all over Europe.
You know, it's interesting. I mean, I guess I'm in the events industry, as you know, running events like GreenTech Festival, and we're seeing, I mean, you may have noticed it if you were at previous festivals, the interest in sustainability is dropping, and issues like defense are going through the roof. We were just sitting backstage having our lunch, sitting amongst experts in the startup world saying all of the investors in startups are pivoting to defense startups, to defense investments. So, I mean, money's flowing in this direction, and I guess you then just have to see it as an industry that needs to be sustainable if it's going to exist. If we say, actually, this is an interesting question. Who believes we need defense for the stabilization of Europe? Put your hand up. Okay, so some people are very low hands. Maybe it's 50-50, but it's interesting to see how that would potentially change through the conversation here. And I guess the point I'm getting to now in this discussion is that, you know, with all this money flowing in, does defense have a free ride? Are there different rules to defense to say, no, we're fighting the war in Ukraine, the tanks that come from Rheinmetall do not have to meet the same EU standards?
So first of all, I would be quite worried if it is really that zero-sum game. So I can just say to everybody here at the conference, you all know it, the climate change problems are not going away. It is more important than ever that we push back and that we secure that those matters persist, that they keep on the highest agenda of our companies, that startups are being funded, that bring us new technologies, and eventually what we saw in the last years was such a good development, that companies are built on business models that are sustainability. So me personally, I see that companies have a profit-based original task, but I think it is a good development that we saw over the decades, that they took more and more responsibility from social topics to questions of how to deal with the workforce, to sustainability, to democracy, and eventually those topics being in the core of their business.
Can you give me, because I really want concrete examples, so what are you doing? Because I mean, these are things that are all happening, and they're happening in the broad ecosystem of change we're seeing. What are you doing to address sustainability?
So, so that is one thing, as I said earlier to your previous question, eventually the industry has to be financed, and I think we have to secure that both is coming for us in that broader sense that we talked about on sustainability. We, with our products in the military area, are serving those who serve the military, but at the same time, fire departments, polices, all of that, law enforcement. In the more narrow term, we of course have to make sure we are reducing the footprint. We have the aspirations that we reduce our footprint coming from the 2050 numbers to 2030 by 63%. That is the path of 1.5% that I hope industries all together will stick to. And we are super excited that this is not only something that we have somewhere in the organization, but it is our vision. So the number one purpose of the company is to pioneer sustainable aviation for the goods of our customers. What does it mean very concretely? It very concretely means that we have to make sure our manufacturing facilities are doing their job in reducing waste, in securing that water and energy is done in a sustainable manner. And we are doing this all over the world, but specifically also, of course, on our 29 sites here in Germany. This is the question of the footprint. On top, for Airbus, we also see that we have to increase our positive handprint. In the defense and space division of Airbus, we also have the space business. It's our satellites that enable us to understand climate change. So if we are talking today about climate change, we know that it exists because of our pictures, because we are following water on Earth, we are seeing how winds change. So this is something where we say, what are, on the grounds of the great capabilities that our colleagues have, space regards, aviation regards, what are those aspects that we can bring to serve? Where are new business models that we can make sure that serve? We can take our planes. We see more and more fires going on. So in both our helicopter business and the aviation business, it's our products that can be there to fight fires. And so both aspects reduce CO2 emission, but also help understand climate change and bring business model forward that secure that.
Interesting. And I guess I can't ask you to answer on behalf of the entire defense industry, but maybe this is cliché, you can correct me, but my feeling would be that in the defense sector there are those who think sustainability, this kind of, I don't know, maybe I'm being super, super judgmental, but is there those kind of backsliders who don't think that military should be part of the same accords and agreements?
I guess there are people that think that you have to prioritize. We believe you can do one and the other. We have, for example, military observation products that are purely functioning on solar energy. While on the other hand, for hydrogen planes, for example, that's our ambition for civil aviation, because civil aviation accounts for about 3 or 4% of CO2 emissions all over the world. You can imagine with the difficulty, technologically wise, that hydrogen planes have, that's most likely something that we'll see in the civil area before we'll see it in the military.
Yep.
We try to be pushing those who might be acting like you just said. So we are leading the defense industries programs on the EU level, with over 100 companies where we are driving what can we do as an industry altogether.
Okay, interesting. It's good to hear. And look, we're already over time, but I have to ask this question because I think, we had Professor Rockstrom yesterday doing the opening keynote, and he talked about the predictions going forward for increased conflict, migration, drought, desert, famine. These are not things that we want to see on Earth, and it's going to lead to social problems and challenges, conflict and war. What's that mean? How do you plan for that risk? I mean, I know it's part of your business model. We've kind of talked about it before, but on the other side, what does that mean for you in the next 20 and 30 years? How do you see that fitting into climate change policy?
So I think it's very important that we interconnect those topics exactly like you did. So if from a European perspective and the perspective of maybe the one European company, there is Airbus, I think stability in a way that we can preserve our democracy and freedom is the #1 objective. And in that regards, we have to acknowledge that climate change is bringing instability. So we have to secure we are fighting it our own, but really also be as a catalyst for industry beyond, and to really drive that agenda. We are, of course, experts in the defense industry where we can make sure we are putting together European players that are making sure that those values are giving, that Europe is getting technology and defense-wise sovereign and resilient. In a way, and the new Chancellor of Germany just said this in his opening government address that he did to the parliament last week. He said, at the end, the objective is that we are having a stronger military for them to never having to operate. And I guess that is the role we are playing. So for Airbus, I can assure we are seeing that those topics are going hand in hand. We are trying to be that partner that is acknowledging that at the end, stability, peace, freedom is met, and we can drive that discussion. We said it earlier over that lunch that you spoke about. We see some companies currently that seem to feel a somewhat relief from not having to be green anymore, not having to be diverse anymore, not having to be whatever. I'm deeply concerned about this. And I think knowing that companies still have a lot of trust by the people, we should take it as a responsibility. And we have to make sure that we are not jumping on that bandwagon, but rather show that we don't think that it's a zero-sum game, but rather that transformation, stability and prosperity also economically go together.
I think that's a fantastic way to wrap up, and I think most of us in the room would agree with that. And you know what? I think in many ways this is a conversation that needs to go on, and next year I'd love it if we could have a full panel on sustainable defence.
Yes.
So it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for being here,
Claudia.
Claudia. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Give a round of applause. Thanks very much, Claudia from Airbus. And don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen, because these two sessions...